And that is what I will always do. So help me God.
Last month in the Oval Office and breaking tonight, President Trump not getting what he wanted in this bill. It's got pages of restrictions in it about how the money can be spent. So he is going to declare a national emergency to get a secure border. Here's Nancy Pelosi on that idea.
You want to talk about a national emergency? Let's talk about today, the one-year anniversary of another manifestation of the epidemic of gun violence in America. That's a national emergency. Why don't you declare that emergency, Mr. President? I wish you would. But a Democratic president can do that. Democratic president can declare emergencies as well.
A warning from her about precedent setting with all of this. Good evening, everybody. I'm Martha MacCallum. This is the story. It is a 1,100, I should say, page bipartisan border bill. And they're voting on it today. They dropped it yesterday. 1,100 pages. And in those pages, the phrases such as no such funds can be used for, none of the funds can be used for, that phrase appears over 300 times in the course of these documents. Moments from now, Democratic Congressman Sean Patrick Maloney and Republican Congressman Steve Scalise. But first, Chief Congressional Correspondent Mike Emanuel live on Capitol Hill tonight with the very latest on this vote. Good evening, Mike.
Martha, good evening to you. We expect action on the House floor later this evening, stopping talk of a partial government shutdown for now. Speaker Nancy Pelosi says she expects there will be plenty of votes to pass this bipartisan funding compromise on the House floor. The best estimate is the vote will likely take place sometime in the next hour or two. The tension really evaporated once it became clear President Trump would sign the deal.
I've just had an opportunity to speak with President Trump, and I would say to all my colleagues, has indicated he's prepared to sign the bill. He will also be issuing a national emergency declaration at the same time. And I've indicated to him that I'm going to support the national emergency declaration.
The vote in the Senate was 83-16, as bipartisan as things get these days. But Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer says the president will have a fight on his hands.
There is word the president will declare a national emergency. I hope he won't. That would be a very wrong thing to do. And Leader Pelosi and I will be responding to that in short order.
Schumer's not the only senator who is unhappy with going around Congress. Maine Republican Susan Collins says it would undermine Congress and is a bad precedent for future presidents. Florida Republican Marco Rubio says we have a crisis at our southern border, but no crisis justifies violating the Constitution. And California Democrat Dianne Feinstein says raiding pots of federal money is unconstitutional and irresponsible. Here's more of the back and forth.
It's not my preferred choice, but I don't think the world's going to spin off its axis.
Reprogram the money, notwithstanding what the Constitution says about that, to build a wall. I can't even get the Republicans to support when they're in the majority. This is crazy.
But this basically avoids another partial government shutdown, creates some certainty, and the fight over the national emergency at the border will be the next big fight here on Capitol Hill. Martha?
That's for sure. Mike, thank you very much. Here now, Democratic Congressman Sean Patrick Maloney of New York. Congressman, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Do you think that the president had any choice given all the restrictions in this bill?
Well, listen to all the Republicans who are opposing it. That's good enough for me. The fact is that those of us who actually care about the Constitution and who care about the implications for where this money is coming from, people who care about our military, I represent West Point. You are literally talking about the funds that are going to be used to expand the cemetery. Listen to me, the cemetery at West Point, not to mention the new science buildings, the new cadet facilities. That's the money the president's going to take, and he's going to have less money doing this extraordinary action than he could have had in a bipartisan compromise in December with no shutdown. This is a declaration of failure by the president and of weakness, and it's disgraceful.
Well, let me ask you about that. It seems that the prior deal had the suggestion, at least, of helping dreamers. and DACA recipients. Have Democrats turned their backs on DACA and on Dreamers? Because it seems to me that there could have been a deal here that would have included some relief for them.
And the president could have had that deal a year and a half ago.
But why couldn't you give it to him now?
Excuse me, he rejected it because he wanted restrictions on legal immigration that he now says he supports. The fact is the president has been inconsistent and unclear about what his priorities are, and he has gotten himself a worse deal with more Republican opposition, conservative Republicans opposing the declaration he's now announcing, than a deal he could have had in December, which would have had bipartisan support, more money for all the priorities.
Understood. I think a lot of...
And he wouldn't be taking it from our military.
Understood. I mean, I think a lot of people who support the president are not happy with the deal that he got. But you didn't answer my question. Why didn't Democrats offer that again? Do you want to propose something that would be supportive for the Dreamers and for DACA recipients?
We are strongly in support of finding a resolution to the Dreamers, of giving them a path to come out of the shadows, to keep faith with the promise we made them. They have done nothing wrong, remember. These are people who were brought here as children. And the fact is the president could have had a deal that included that. That's what my answer was to your question. What he did instead is he drove us down this blind alley, got a worse result for himself. He's making a bunch of conservatives and Republicans unhappy. He's setting a very dangerous precedent that will come back to haunt us, I will predict to you. And the fact is that he's getting less money for the priorities he's announced, and he's robbing critical funds from institutions like West Point. That is a disaster. This is a mess, and it's on the president.
Well, we'll see. Everybody's trying to point the finger of blame at everybody else here, so we'll see where the Americans put the blame.
I think what you're seeing is a bunch of Democrats and conservative Republicans united in saying this is a terrible outcome, and it's only the president who's brought us here.
I just wonder what the DACA recipients and Dreamers feel when they look at this deal as well. My guess is that they're not too happy either.
It's the first time I've heard somebody articulate a concern for the Dreamers on this network, I can tell you.
That's absolutely untrue. That's absolutely untrue.
I'm telling you, it's the first time I've heard it. The notion
well, you don't watch very often, I guess.
Listen, look, please. The notion that somehow we care less about the Dreamers because the president has put us in this ridiculous situation is nothing but a
I'm just asking what happened to that topic, which was a very passionate topic on the part of many Democrats and Americans. It seems to have disappeared.
It remains so. Oh, come on. It remains so. What happened to it for the third time is that the president, trying to restrict legal immigration, rejected the deal that would have included a decision on the Dreamers. He did that, just like he put the whole thing in play by ending the Dreamer program.
Well, we both know that there were other points along the way in this process where that suggestion was reopened and reoffered, and it is now not part of this deal. So I thank you for being here tonight, and I hope you'll come back. I really do.
Thank you.
Representative Sean Patrick Maloney, New York. Thank you, sir. Here now with more, and the other side of the story here is House Republican Whip Steve Scalise. Good to see you tonight, sir. Thank you for being here. What's your response to that? Why was it not possible? It's obvious the president's not happy with this deal, and it sounds like Representative Maloney's also not happy with this deal. Where did all the compromise go in this process?
Well, Martha, first of all, let me correct the record where Representative Maloney kind of went down a road that doesn't exist. President Trump was trying to get DACA to be part of a deal. I was in those negotiations. Nancy Pelosi never wanted to have any conversations about DACA and solving that problem. If you remember, it was Chuck Schumer who over a year ago had that same offer on the table to solve the DACA problem, and he walked away from the deal after initially indicating he would support it because people on the left went nuts because they don't want to solve the DACA problem. They want it to remain a political pawn. And that's been the fact of this matter. You can go look. President Trump has been trying to solve that problem for years. It's been the Democrats who have walked away from the table every single time on solving DACA.
In terms of the national emergency, is this a politically perilous position that the president is taking. You heard Representative Maloney. He says, Democrats and a number of conservative Republicans are very much against this move.
Well, first of all, you've got to look at what the president's main objective is, and that is to keep America safe. It's not just a campaign promise he makes. This was something that we all take an oath, by the way. President Trump took that same oath to keep the country safe. We have a crisis at our southern border. He's been trying in multiple ways to solve that. We've been able to get some money for border wall, not nearly as much as I would like to see. We approved the whole $5.7 billion last year. It didn't get through the Senate. So here we are. In this bill, we're going to be able to approve about $1.375 billion. That'll allow us to build about 55 more miles of wall, especially in those areas of the Rio Grande where you're seeing most of the real bad activity coming across. That's where our border agents said they need to build wall. Current law, by the way, blocks the president from building wall in that area. This agreement will remove those limitations, but it's not as much as the president or I would like to see. So there are other areas the president can go. And by the way, he's going to have to follow the laws on this. But if you look at the National Emergencies Act, this goes back to the 1970s. It's a law that's been on the books and has been used, by the way, dozens of times when it's appropriate. And here's a case where the president, I think, has made the case to the national, to the country. We've got to secure the border, and it's a crisis. Here's one way he can help solve it. Congress should act to do more, to give more to the president. But this is where we are right now.
Well, let me ask you, because there are some who are expressing deep concern about even the $1.375 billion, that the way this bill is structured, there are a lot of outs, that even local mayors could say, yes, but you can't build it on this part of this property. How concerned are you that 55 miles and the money that was supposed to go to it may never even happen?
Well, first of all, this was one of the final contention points, is that it's about 100 miles of new area in the Rio Grande that is currently blocked by current law. In this bill, over 100 miles is opened up now. Now, the one thing, there were some Democrats that wanted to block that altogether or to give local mayors veto authority. That would have been a non-starter. Ultimately, what they said was in the bill is that they will consult. The Department of Homeland Security will consult with local officials, but in the end, after getting public input, the Department of Homeland Security can still move forward to do what they need to do to keep this country safe, including building new barrier wall in that area that current law blocks them from doing. So there is no local veto authority. Democrats tried to sneak that in at the last minute. Okay. That was able to be kept out.
Yeah, just to mention, I mean, support for the wall has been growing, according to our poll. As you look at September and then January and now, it's gone from 39% in September. Now it's at 46%. And when you ask people if they want a budget deal that includes money for a barrier, security, and humanitarian aid, that number is at 66%. So we'll see if politically opposing this is.
That's why you saw the Democrat candidates for president in the Senate vote no, because they're for open borders. They're not for border security. They're in that small percentage of people that don't want border security. Most people see what's happening. President Trump has made an oath to keep this country safe, and he's following through on the promise. Congress should do more. The president's working to get as much money as he can to meet that objective. He's doing it through legal means. Here's one, and a national emergency is another option he has.
Yeah, they're going to push back on those legal means. We'll see where it gets the argument. Congressman Steve Scalise, thank you. Good to see you tonight, sir.
Good seeing you, Martha.
You too. Coming up, a shocking development in the Jussie Smollett case. The actor who claimed that he was attacked by Trump supporters, plus former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, who was fired for leaking FBI information to the press, now is free to speak, and he had quite a bit to say on 60 Minutes about the first meeting that he had with the president after James Comey was fired.
I was speaking to the man who had just run for the presidency and won the election for the presidency, and who might have done so with the aid of the government of Russia, our most formidable adversary on the world stage. And that was something that troubled me greatly.
House Judiciary Committee member Matt Gaetz, next.
The story.
Tina Rod Rosenstein, if he doesn't agree to testify.
Yeah, I'd like to know what happened. I mean, you're having a conversation about whether or not you're going to invoke the 25th Amendment. So I would imagine if the shoe were on the other foot, my Democratic colleagues would want to know about that conversation.
Senate Judiciary Chairman Lindsey Graham says that he would like some answers after fired Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe sat down with 60 Minutes correspondent Scott Pelley and made a number of shocking revelations, including this.
There were meetings at the Justice Department in which it was discussed whether the vice president and a majority of the cabinet could be brought together to remove the president of the United States under the 25th Amendment.
That is shocking. Here now, Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz. He sits on the House Judiciary Committee. Congressman, thank you very much for being here tonight. What questions would you have for Andrew McCabe after hearing what he said? We only have a couple sound bites so far. It's going to be on Sunday night, but so far.
The obvious first question is who he worked with or spoke to or interacted with through intermediaries or directly on the cabinet to potentially remove the president of the United States. Right now what we have is a partial fact battle between Andrew McCabe, who says that there was a serious plan to seek the removal of the president, and Rod Rosenstein, the current Deputy Attorney General, who's issued a denial that's not an unequivocal denial. It's a couched denial. I agree with Senator Graham that we want to get him in. But one thing, Martha, that's not being reported is that Jim Baker, who was at the time the top lawyer at the FBI, he gave testimony to the House Judiciary Committee that confirms Andrew McCabe's account. So it's not just McCabe's word against Rosenstein. The other people that were involved in this conspiracy to utilize their powers as unelected bureaucrats to oust the guy that won the election, that's something confirmed by the top lawyer there.
Which raises the other obvious question: what powers are those to seek to remove a president who was elected by the United States of America to the office? What powers, what authority, and what evidence did they have to be taking these measures and having these conversations?
Yeah. Remember, Lisa Page and Peter Strzok were texting each other 10 months into the investigation that there was no there there. So despite the fact that the two people conducting the investigation were saying there's no there there, you've got McCabe, who was just so, I guess, enamored with Jim Comey that he couldn't conceive of any legitimate reason that Comey would be fired. And so they used this illegitimate authority to go and try to disrupt the duly elected president. I mean, I went on the floor about a year ago and said these people were attempting a palace coup against the president. Most of the national media mocked me for doing so, but now you in fact have Andrew McCabe and Jim Baker, two people at the very top of the FBI, saying that these conversations were serious and that they happened. So let's get people under oath and figure out what went on.
Absolutely. I mean, this is an extraordinarily serious situation. And he is obviously very impassioned still, even after we have reports from the House and the Senate that suggest that after, a couple of years of investigation, they haven't found anything yet. So I'm very curious what he found, what he knows, and what has put him in a position where he is so impassioned about removing the president from office. What is it? What does he know?
That's why they launched the obstruction of justice investigation, because they had nothing on collusion. Again, even the people who were involved in collecting the evidence admitted in their private text messages that there was no evidence of collusion.
Revelation, breaking news, we should say, in the Jussie Smollett case, just hours after the actor's first national TV interview, claiming that he was attacked by two men who were shouting MAGA country. Investigators in Chicago now say tonight that the whole thing was staged. We have breaking news on that. Stick around. Very, very big developments. Also, Fox News confirming that former Vice President Joe Biden is, quote, almost certain to enter the 2020 race now.
Sleepy Joe Biden. We call him 1% Joe, because he ran at least twice, I think 3 times. They say twice. I think he ran 3 times. And he never had more than 1%. So we call him 1% Joe.
I can't tell you.
case needs to go to trial or the charges need to be dismissed. Because an investigator involved in his case now stands accused of stolen valor, meaning that he claimed honors that he did not receive. Here now exclusively, Philip Stackhouse, attorney for Major Matthew Goldstein. Philip, welcome back to the show. Good to have you here tonight. Explain first of all the waiving of Article 32. What's the significance of that? And then this issue of stolen valor.
Well, waiving the Article 32 hearing is essentially agreeing to go to trial without a probable cause hearing. We've waived the Article 32 hearing. We've demanded speedy trial. We want to go to trial right now. This case has drug on long enough. It's been going on for some 9 years now, 8 years since Matt made his statement to the Central Intelligence Agency, and about the same amount of time that it's being investigated. It's time to get to trial. Matt's life is on hold, and we need to get it done.
In terms of the stolen valor issue with the investigator, what exactly are you referring to?
Well, this is quite shocking. We received an anonymous tip that the lead investigator in this case was wearing awards that he wasn't authorized to wear, including the Purple Heart, that he was holding himself out as a Special Forces officer, or excuse me, a Special Forces soldier. We had our contacts make some inquiries for us, found out that was in fact true and that he was charged, not from the prosecution, but from other government entities. We received a copy of the charges that this special agent is facing now. And the stolen valor is really important, that he was wearing awards that he did not rate, that he was doing that for personal gain. But perhaps what's most shocking is the fact that he is also charged with making lies in official statements. That makes everything that he has said up to this point suspect. Each investigation that he's been involved in is now suspect. When he says something, you have to give pause before you can believe what he says, because in fact, he's admitted that he's made these lies and that he did it for personal gain.
What did he say about?
One would have to wonder now.
Let me ask you about. He apparently talked about or bragged about a bad shoot in combat. What does that mean?
Right. So the information that we received, while he's not charged with it, the information that we received is that he was holding himself out as a Special Forces soldier, that he lost his Special Forces tab, and the reason that he lost it was because he was involved in a bad shoot in Afghanistan. Ironically, that's exactly what Matt Goldstein is charged with, a bad shoot in Afghanistan for which he lost his Special Forces tab over.
So, some might listen to this and say, well, maybe he should be removed from the case, but, someone else could take his place.
Well, that's true. Someone might take his place. There was an investigation that ran before this special agent was involved. That resulted in no charges. That resulted in an administrative hearing, which Matt had limited due process rights. That resulted in a finding that Matt did not violate the law of armed conflict. That resulted in him being processed administratively for either conduct unbecoming or being medically retired. This new agent contacted us in October, November of 2016, said he was the lead agent, and now has gone out and re-interviewed people, provided that results of interview to the prosecution, and it's upon that which they've now charged him.
So he's the central driving force in all of this. I got to leave it there, but keep us posted.
I think that's fair. We will.
Thank you very much. Good to have you here tonight, sir. Coming up, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez succeeded in preventing 25,000 Amazon jobs coming to New York, and she's really happy about it, but not everyone else is. Mark Thiessen and Jennifer Holdsworth coming up next.
Those jobs, there was no guarantee that those jobs were for the New Yorkers that were here. We were looking at a deal that was not primarily putting the community first.
The actor who claimed that he was attacked in the streets of Chicago by two men shouting racial slurs and saying this is MAGA country. Just hours after his first national TV interview aired, ABC 7 Chicago is now reporting that he was a no-show for an interview with police detectives today, and multiple sources tell them, quote, Jussie Smollett and the two men who are being questioned by police staged the attack, allegedly because his character was being written out of the show Empire. Smollett's story came under fire really almost from the beginning after he refused to turn the cell phone over to the police. Robin Roberts pressed him on this earlier today.
They wanted me to give my phone to the tech for 3 to 4 hours. I'm sorry. I have private pictures and videos and numbers. My partner's number, my family's number, my castmates' number, my friends' numbers, my private emails, my private songs.
So the Chicago police will not confirm this story at this point, but this report is coming from ABC Chicago 7. And as I said, they said he was a no-show for an interview with police detectives today, and saying also that the attack was staged because he was going to be written out of the show. We will continue to follow this story and see what the police in Chicago have to say about this report from ABC when we get it. All right, so the Democratic Socialist Congresswoman known as AOC declaring victory tonight after Amazon says see you later to a huge deal that was expected to bring thousands of jobs and many businesses to the city of New York. She tweeted this: anything is possible. Today was the day a group of dedicated, everyday New Yorkers and their neighbors defeated Amazon's corporate greed, its worker exploitation, and the power of the richest man in the world. Joining me now, Mark Thiessen, American Enterprise Institute scholar and a Fox News contributor, and Jennifer Holdsworth, Democratic strategist and senior vice president of issues management at MWWPR. Good to see you both tonight. Jennifer, let me start with you. How's this going over? Was this a good move? Because I hear a lot of people in the city today saying that they think this is a tremendous loss for jobs and the economy in New York.
It is a loss. Congresswoman Cortez should not be celebrating this loss. It was going to be an economic engine for the region, and the argument that it was just going to be executive jobs wasn't true. One of the things that Amazon was looking for when they were looking for the spaces for these various headquarters around the country was a talent pool that you could draw from. So she should absolutely not be celebrating this. However, the answer is somewhere in the middle. Amazon would not come to the table to discuss a lot of the concerns that various elected officials had in New York City. And had they been willing to come to the table and discuss this, they perhaps could have salvaged the deal. And they just didn't do that.
Yeah, I heard all day today about, pizza parlors and manicure places and all these businesses, dry cleaners that were hoping to open in that area, condos that had been built to house these new residents and some of the current residents. Mark, is this one of those situations where maybe she got what she didn't want, where it was fun railing against it, but now that it's happened, it may backfire on her?
Well, she'll learn that when the fallout comes out of it. But look, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is a wrecking ball inside the Democratic Party. And as a conservative, I'm sitting here with popcorn watching it happen. This was a deal that was negotiated by the Democratic governor of New York, the Democratic mayor of New York, sponsored by Democratic legislators. And she comes in, the newly elected Democratic socialist, and wrecks the deal and creates such a hostile environment to the point that Amazon said, we don't want to work in this environment. We're gone. And they took 25,000 jobs with them. And just to show you how economically illiterate she is, she said, this is on the Yahoo story, she said, the city was paying for those jobs. Frankly, if we were willing to give away $3 billion for this deal, we could just invest that $3 billion in the district ourselves. We could hire more teachers. We could fix our subways. We could put people to work. There's no $3 billion. It's not that there was like a cash subsidy to Amazon. They were tax incentives. So literally, she doesn't understand that there's not $3 billion. Amazon took the $3 billion away with it, along with 25,000 jobs. So the lesson for Amazon is do your business in red states where we don't act crazy like this. And the lesson for America is if you like this, you'll love the Green New Deal.
All right, speaking of the Green New Deal, Chuck Schumer very upset that Mitch McConnell wanted to force a vote on this in the Senate. Here's Chuck Schumer, the senator.
They're bringing a resolution forward so they can vote against it. This cheap, cynical ploy evidently represents the sum total of Senate Republicans' leadership on the vital issue of climate change, an issue that cries out for serious engagement by members of both parties. But rather than seriously engage on the issue, our Republican colleagues are taking a page from President Trump's petty playbook, trying to make this a game of political gotcha.
Jennifer, why not vote on it?
Senator Schumer is right. This is a craven political tactic by the majority leader, but we've come to expect that from Mitch McConnell ever since Merrick Garland. But I was told by a Republican assemblyman in New Jersey that he used to ask the speaker why they didn't put up some of the Democratic measures, just to shoot them down and show the populace how wrong they were. And the speaker told him that if they did that, that the laws just might pass. And I think that that's what might happen here. It's a very, very bold piece of legislation that absolutely has issues. I think instead of shaming critics of climate change, we should be taking this opportunity to educate everybody so that they understand what's in the deal. But you've got a lot of conservationists who are behind this efforts too. Yes, it's a moonshot. Yes, there are pieces of this legislation that absolutely will not pass and cannot be accomplished in 10 years, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't try to come together at the table and make this a workable bill.
I got 10 seconds, Mark. Just quick response, please.
Yeah, I worked in the Senate for 7 years, and I never heard a senator complain about his bill being brought up on the Senate floor. They always complain the bills are not being brought up on the Senate floor. Who was the genius who decided to put this in legislative language so that the Republic, what did they think was going to happen? So they just created the legislative language so we can now put every Democrat on record as being for Ocasio-Cortez's $100 trillion Green New Deal boondoggle. Congratulations. Good legislative work.
Thanks, guys. Good to see you both. Thank you.
Thanks.
Coming up next, 1 year ago today, Thomas Hickson's dad ran toward the Parkland shooter, shielding several students from bullets and losing his own life. But his son says that if the shooter had reached out to his dad earlier, everything may have turned out differently.
That's what he was trained to do. It's just the kind of person he is. That's what he instilled in me. Yeah, he was just a hero.
Took the lives of 14 students and 3 faculty members at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High in Parkland, Florida. One of those victims is Chris Hickson, the athletic director and wrestling coach who selflessly ran into the building as others were running out in an attempt to save students' lives, ultimately sacrificing his own. Chris's son, Thomas, is now carrying out his father's heroic legacy, and he joins me now. Thomas, good to see you tonight. Thank you very much for being here.
Yep. Glad to be here, Martha, and talk about my dad.
You know, you said that if the shooter had met your dad, if he had talked to your dad about what was going on, that you think maybe all of this could have turned out differently. What did you mean by that?
I wholeheartedly still believe that. You know, my father was the type of person that, if anyone was having trouble, they could come to him and he would be there to give them advice, lead them on the way. There had been a few examples throughout my time of, before I went off to college and before I left that, he actually brought in some students who were having troubles at home, and they actually lived with us for a little bit, until they got back on their feet and they were able to continue on.
I know your mother decided to put on your father's tombstone the quote, "If not me, then who?" which is so moving when you think about how your father died. What does that motto say to you? How does it drive you to remember your dad?
It's a very simple motto. It's a simple 5 words, but like you said, it means a lot. It's something that I've tried to live my life by ever since I was young. I've always felt that I've lived that motto in a different sense. I never put in those 5 words. But yeah, even after he's gone, I'm just trying to continue on and live those 5 words as well, just like he did every day.
And you're working with the Travis Manion Foundation to